Okay, so yesterday I had the opportunity to share some thoughts at the candlelight vigil for Sydney and her passing. And I wanted to kind of expand some of those thoughts and share that with you all. I've been looking at the book of Job recently with tragedy and looking at how that whole thing works and realizing that a lot of times we kind of misquote, not really misquote, but misinterpret or misuse Job. We like to use Job and say, well, see, at least you don't have it as bad as Job. And then that's where we end this 40 some odd chapter book, and that's the point that we get out of it. And sometimes I think we just completely miss the mark there. So there's a lot of wisdom, and I'd just like to share a couple pieces of wisdom with you. The first thing is that we notice that Job, he asks the question, why? And of course he asks the question why. We all ask the question why. There are times when we just shake our fists in the air, angry with God and saying, why did you allow this to happen? Why did you let this tragedy strike me? Why did you let this happen to my family and my friends? Why, God? Why? We shake our fists in the air, but you know what? There is one bit of comfort. Even as we shake our fists in the air at God, God is there to hold our fists, to hold our hand, and help us through the tragedy that we deal with, even if we don't get the answers that we're looking for. So I understand, I ask, you ask, we all ask why, and so did Job. Now, Job likely was asking with an accusational tone as well. God, why? Why did you let this happen? Lord, why did you do this? Why did you take my family from me? And with that accusational tone, we find Job's friends certainly weren't helpful because all they do is accuse Job of wrongdoing. And then we find God coming back and answering Job, and it wasn't a pretty answer either. We can see the fruits of that accusational tone, though it helps us when it comes to getting our emotion out and grieving and just kind of releasing that. It's good for that. However, it's bad for trying to get real answers. We're not going to get real answers with an accusational why. So maybe we need to shift the way that we ask that question. Maybe we need to ask God, how can I be why? How can I be the reason why this tragedy struck? And that sounds dark at first, but I want you to bear with me. I hear that Sydney had a beautiful smile. Maybe just that, maybe just something as wonderful as the memory of her smile might make some kid decide that someday they want to be a dentist. Could you imagine 10 years from now, you or someone or one of her friends that were just a teen, could you imagine they become a dentist? How cool would that be? And when asked, well, why did you decide to become a dentist? They can say, well, I became a dentist because of Sydney. See, they could embrace this tragedy and let themselves and their attempt to do something good for the world be the reason why. I also hear that she had this bubbly personality, and she's been described as being like a rock star, right? Imagine someone that decides to actually, I don't know, be a rock star. Imagine someone with this tragedy decide to take guitar lessons and singing lessons and join a band, and one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, they're actually on tour, making art for the world to hear. And maybe on that tour, I can imagine an interview where someone says, why did you decide to do this? And they could say, well, because of Sydney. See, death and tragedy can motivate us. And in the honor of the ones that we love, we can actually do good for the world. But maybe it's not just being a dentist or being a rock star. It could be a bunch of things. I mean, maybe you could actually change the world in Sydney's honor. Maybe you could be the reason why. Embrace it. Let this dark, difficult thing change your very being. Let it motivate you to become better, to help your church, your community, your state, your country, the world. It's up to you how you respond to this. So instead of maybe shaking our fists at the heavens, and again, I understand that, But maybe we shift our questioning to God and say, God, how can I be the reason why? What can I do in her memory? How can I change the world? How can I change myself? How can I just be better in Sydney's honor? And maybe that can be the reason why. But the second thing I see in Job that I'd like to mention is Job's friends. You might notice in chapter 2, Job's friends drop everything when he's dealing with all the craziness he's dealing with. Keep in mind, Job had lost his entire family except for his wife, all of his kids. He's got this leprosy. He's sitting in ashes. He's having an obviously difficult time. And his friends drop what they're doing and they show up. That's important, that they drop what they're doing and they show up. With Sydney's family, they're dealing with an unbelievable amount of pain right now. Unbelievable. And you know what? We'll probably surround them for the next week. But my encouragement is to not stop at a week. They're going to need more. Because we'll go back to our regular lives. We'll go back to everything being okay. And we're not having that gaping hole in our lives and in our heart. But see, a week, a month, a year, a decade from now, they're still missing Sydney. They're still hurting. And they still need us in this community to wrap our arms around them with love. But back to Job, the best thing that his friends did was stop what they're doing and show. They tore their clothes because that was an outward sign of grief. And they sat there with him and wept for not a day, not an hour, not a quick little visit. For 7 days and 7 nights, they sat there with Job in silence. That's amazing. And if you read the book of Job, you'll see that's the best thing they did, is simply sit in silence. See, as soon as they started talking, things went sour. See, they began being accusational and they just said the wrong things. And here's the point. There's nothing that you or I can say that can make this better. There's nothing that you or I can say that can take the pain away. But you know what we can do? We can show up. We can wrap our arms around this family. We can love on them. We can pray for them. We can be there for them. And sometimes, all we can do is sit there with them in silence. Give them a hug. And just be there. And it's hard to do because we want to fix it. We want to say the right things, but your words can't fix it. But you know what? Your hugs and your love can make it better, one day at a time, and help them with this, let this pain heal. Yeah, it'll leave a huge scar, but by our love, we can help the healing process. So again, looking through Job, there's some wisdom. One is trying to ask God why and the right reasons to try to find out how we can actually be moved in a positive way by such negativity. And the second thing is to simply be there with people when they're struggling. That's my challenge to you, Blanchester. Let's not forget this family, and let's be forever changed in a positive way. Let's decide to be positive and change the world.